Okay, we begin work on number 12 now. We're given function f of x is quantity x squared minus 1 to the third power, and we're trying to find out for what values of x the function is increasing. And that will happen whenever the first derivative is greater than 0. So we'll find the first derivative. We find that using the chain rule. We bring down the 3, reduce the exponent from 3 to 2. We have 3 times x squared minus 1 quantity to the second power, and all times the derivative of x squared minus 1, which is 2x, and that simplified gives us 6x times the quantity x plus 1 times x minus 1 squared. From here we have the zeros. X, this will be 0 when x equals 0, x equals negative 1, and x equals positive 1. So we make the number line, and we want to test the values of the first derivative. And so we choose the test points -2, -1/2, 1/2, and 2, and we'll evaluate the first derivative at each of those values to determine whether or not the first derivative is positive or negative. Now, since the x plus 1 times x minus 1 is all squared, whatever we put into there has to come out positive. So, and the only other factor is 6x, so that whole derivative will be negative whenever x is negative, and will be positive whenever x is positive, which gives us those values for the first derivative. Now we're trying to find out where the function is increasing, and that would be for all x greater than 0. So that is the answer to part A. Second, we want to find the x and y coordinates of the relative maximum and minimum points. Well, we have a relative maximum whenever the relative max will occur whenever f prime of x changes from positive to negative, but there are no such points from our sign chart. The relative minimum, it will occur when f prime of x changes from negative to positive, and that happens when x is 0, y is negative 1. We find the y is negative 1 by plugging x equals 0 into the original function. We get negative 1 cubed, which is negative 1. Okay, so that answers part B. Next we want to find out for what values of x the graph is concave upward. Well, if the first derivative is 6x times x squared minus 1 quantity squared, then the second derivative we will have a product rule. So I'll rewrite the first derivative again so we'll see that clearly. The second derivative will be 1 d2 plus 2 d1. Let's work that out. So 1 would be 6x. Then the derivative of x squared minus 1 quantity squared would be 2 times x squared minus 1 to the first power, then times 2x. Then we're going to add to that 2 d1, and that is just 6 times x squared minus 1 quantity squared. So we're looking for where this is 0. What I would do here is factor out a greatest common factor of 6 times x squared minus 1. That leaves me 4x squared plus x squared minus 1. So the final factored form is 6 times x plus 1 times x minus 1 times 5x squared minus 1, which gives me the zeros. X equals negative 1, x equals 1, and x equals plus or minus root 5 over 5. So I make my sign chart, I choose some values. Okay, and so we're going to test the second derivative with -2, -3/4, 0, 3/4, and 2. And with the -2 we get negative, negative, positive, which is positive. With -3/4 we're going to get positive, negative, positive, which is negative. With x equals 0 we get positive, negative, negative, which is positive. With 3/4 we get positive, negative, positive, which is negative. And finally with 2 we get positive, positive, and positive, which is positive. And so we wanted to find out